Hey, everybody. Welcome to a midweek edition of the Mid-Curve podcast. We are here, as we are almost every week, to talk about the NFT and crypto markets with people who are expert and semi-expert traders. We spend a lot of time in Discord and online looking at the market in general. We're pretty actively kind of like watching things all day long. There's the four of us here who do this, part of the Mid-Curve group, which is a larger group than just the four of us. But we come here to kind of share some of the stuff that we've learned and some of the things that have gone on over the course of the week. I want to take a second to introduce everybody. First, I'll start off. My name is Funky Donk. My real life name is Gavin Purcell. I have been in the space for about 2 years now or so. Have launched a project. Mostly am a trader and collector. In real life, I am a TV producer, media person, and marketing kind of expert, and really enjoy following this stuff around. Eric, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Eric. I'm a former finance professional, currently unemployed, and just really, really interested in overall crypto and NFT markets.
Great. What about you, Grant? You want to introduce yourself?
For sure, yeah. So I've been in the space about 2 years. I kind of fell backwards accidentally into it about a year into COVID. My background's in sort of management consulting, and I play sort of many roles in the space today, from collecting to degenning to advising different products and founders in the space.
Great. And Salty, what about you?
Yeah, I'm Salty. I'm a engineering research academic and a bit of a math guy. I've been in crypto for a while. Of course, had a stint for a few years as a Bitcoin maxi, and luckily grew out of that. And I just fell into the NFT space through Axie Infinity and Play to Earn Gaming, and then big into DeFi, and here we are.
Awesome. All right. So let's jump in. As we start our podcast with every week, we try to give one word that encapsulates the market and maybe a little bit of an explainer of what that one word is. Eric, I'm going to start with you. What is your one word for the week of what we're looking at right now?
Up. It's up.
I don't think we've heard that one for a while. That's a new one.
It's just all going up.
Anything you directly attribute that to?
Well, I think from a macro standpoint, right, it's pretty clear that the overall complexion of the economy is getting better. You're seeing clear signals that we're in a disinflationary environment. But on the other side of that, it's also I think like this narrative of the Goldilocks scenario is starting to really, really get traction, because you're not seeing significant enough weakness in the labor market, such as there's a recession. And I think obviously Powell's commentary today also struck a more dovish stance, and they were basically going. I think he basically, a lot of people came out of this saying like, well, it seems like they did 25 basis points. Seems like what he's telling people is they're really gonna wait and see, but they see the hard part of the job as more or less done. And so, the market's inference on that is maybe we get one more increase, but it's relatively steady from there on out, with the potential for rate cuts starting at the end of the year.
Right. Okay, I want to dive into this a little bit later, but let's keep getting our words. Salty, what about you? What is your word for the week?
Oh man, it's always hard to pick one word. Maybe sidelined. In terms of
explain that. Yeah, what is that about?
Things are up, and probably will go more up. But also, I guess it's like just the fond memories of the real bull market still loom large in my mind, or like I'm still not at a place where I trust the markets enough to deploy like fresh capital. Like I'm trading crypto for more crypto, and I am trying to flip NFTs and stuff, but so I'm definitely not sidelined, but I'm kind of sidelining myself, because I don't want to take those sweet, delicious dollars that are so valuable still and dump more of them into crypto just yet.
Okay, that's good. I think that's a really interesting talking point. And Grant, what about you? What's your word for the week?
Probably still painful, right? I think
Mm.
2022 was a year marked by just whipsaws in positioning and leverage and a lot of pain unless, you kind of just took the year off essentially or timed everything perfectly. And 2023's at least, the first quarter so far looks like it's much the same way, except, most of the pain trade is up, right? But I think I more lean towards, Salty's positioning so far in that we're not in a true bull market. People sitting heavy in ETH-based NFTs are feeling pain. People sitting in cash are in pain, and people sitting in stale, I'll say, crypto coins are in pain right now. It's really just the majors and the fresher coins with narratives that are running, as well as the ones that have been just shorted the heaviest and are just seeing the pops along the way here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, my word will kind of get us into our first conversation, which I think leans into that a little bit, which is bridge. And I think that the word I say bridge is because I think a lot of talk has been about a new, not new, but a kind of like popping token and chain called Canto. And I bridged to Canto yesterday, much later than some of my mid curve compatriots here, but it's an interesting thing. Obviously, when you see a new chain, or I keep saying new, it's not totally new, but when you see a chain and seeing a lot of people bridge over to it, it makes me wonder two things. One, are we in a place where we are starting to see signs of what might be a bull market again? Because as bridging to a new chain and trying to kind of get gains on that chain does feel like a very bull market thing in some ways. And then two, I think the bigger question is like, is Canto a thing, right? And I think this is something that we should kind of dig into as it's been kind of a dominant conversation point for this week. I should say dominant amongst us. And I don't know if I definitely don't think it's like even mainstreamed in the NFT market yet or in the crypto markets. But I could be wrong. I don't know. What is your all take on this? Eric, do you have a take on Canto and like what's kind of causing this surge right now?
Yeah. So the whole I think the conceit of Canto as a layer one and how it's different from other layer one competitors is that it's all built with the principle that blockchain infrastructure should be a public good, and so there should never be any fees attached to it. Um, and so when you use like protocols and services, there generally is like there's never going to be a fee, and how they incentivize you know developers to build within the ecosystem is that basically a recent governance was passed going forward, a percentage of all gas costs gets redistributed to dApps based on usage. So at a very, very high level, and this is like the super reductive crayon explanation of it. If you build a dApp and it gets lots of usage, a bigger chunk of the CSR will be allocated to you. And that's how you basically monetize yourself as an app developer while providing something that is a public good and of that is of service to the Canto network. So I think like one from a narrative standpoint, it sets itself apart for some of the traditional layer ones in the sense that the pitch is not just, hey, we have like a million TPS, like build on us. And I think this is the other reason that this is Canto I think has become such a narrative is because this was purely largely incubated within the Web3 native community. Most of the early proponents of Canto are, what I would say like people, high profile people on CT. And I think that culminated eventually in VCs getting involved, like Variant, which I view as one of the smarter VCs in the space. A couple of weeks ago announced that they did a fairly large OTC market buy of Canto tokens. And I think that in itself has kind of allowed the narrative to accelerate. And now we're sort of going into like the Solana summer NFT moment for the space, where things are just kind of going nuts a little bit. I don't know how much of this is sustainable, but I do agree with the sentiment that it is probably still early days. A lot of sideline people are looking in on how to bridge to the chain and interact with it. And obviously the network itself is going through that adjustment process because it says last night basically nothing has worked.
I know it's been pretty interesting. Like we've been trying to trade on Alto Market, which is their essentially their main marketplace, and it's been broken as far as I mean, I actually did just buy something there. I did just buy something like about 15 minutes ago, but it was the first thing I was able to buy all day long.
Hey, you were on this podcast 15 minutes ago. You
Well,
buying NFTs
okay.
while we're podcasting?
Not 15 minutes ago. Let's say 25 minutes ago. I bought another Cantillionaire just because I am now diving in. I will say this, like as somebody who despise Solana NFTs, and I think I have like multiple memories. I didn't do very many of them, but I think every single NFT on Solana that I bought was a rug out of like, I think maybe 7 of them. I'm very hesitant to kind of like dive into new chain NFTs, but I do find this one semi-interesting because of some of the reasons Eric talked about. Salty, in the DeFi world, like, are people taking, I mean, I know Canto's price is up. Are people taking Canto pretty seriously?
Wait, I want to. Okay, so I'm glad you squeezed in one more Canto buy right before we turned on the recording. But I want to go back to what Eric said. I don't remember you mentioning in Midcurve this big VC that was buying OTC bags at Canto at the time. I feel like I would have bought more if I knew. You hiding this from us?
No, it was on Twitter. I thought I posted it in here. You know what I did? I think I probably posted it in Midnight Labs to try to get rubies. Posted here.
Good job. You'll get some fresh rubies. By the way, I still have not done anything to get rubies, and I should. I know I've been completely missing it. So anyway, Salty, is Canto interesting to you as a token?
Well, yeah, all tokens are interesting, right? I'm not going to denigrate any token.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, I
think Eric's summary of their mechanics and gas burning, I think, was good, and that's a niche that isn't filled. Whether that's a long-term sustainable narrative that keeps attracting volume and accretions, with CT personalities and stuff, is always a question that, like, it's impossible to predict, right? But I think, Canto is a Evmos fork, which was hot and popping back when it launched in the bull because it gave a big airdrop. I think Canto has going for it that bridging is so miserably difficult that if they could solve that, they could probably bring on more TVL. I don't know off the top of my head what the TVL to market cap ratio is or anything, but I don't know. I still have Osmos and Atom bags, and so Cosmos, the whole ecosystem. I mean, Tendermint is great, but also it just kind of is what it is. I really don't know what the future of Canto looks like, but I do think Eric hit the two big points, that could be good niches to fill, which is that it's very Web3 native, and the gas burning and returning value to builders is huge, and because that's all that matters is who can attract the builders, right? Like, no matter how cool and VC backed your chain is, if people aren't building on it, it's done, whether in 6 months or a year or 6 days.
We really need builders, particularly those that can build a working NFT marketplace.
Yeah, please get on it now.
I understand. I want to be really fair to the Alto Market team because obviously they did not build this with that expectation that half of ETH was going to try to bridge over. But the user experience, if I were to summarize it in one sentence, it's basically OpenSea with jazz right now.
Which it is very nice jazz.
I will say I appreciate that, and if OpenSea had played jazz, I might have much different feelings about it. So
they could have curried a lot more favor at the community with some soothing music.
Grant, what's your take on this? Do you, as somebody who I often look to you as somebody who's pretty good about when things are gonna go bad in some ways, like I always listen to you about like where you think things are. Does this have life, or do you kind of see this as like a quick kind of pump and then it's probably going to slow way down?
Well, I guess going back to my opening statement, it's more about like new, fresh narratives, and that's why newer coins have had more life the last 2, 3 months. And it's just about the overhang or lack thereof, right? Of things that can be used against you, right? And other than, some maybe possibly sketchy Genesis distribution of the Canto token, which you can't really prove right now, other than just some on-chain whispers. There's really nothing you can FUD about Canto, right? Other than they didn't expect, like Eric said, half of ETH mainnet users to try and bridge over and play around on their marketplace. There's no VCs waiting to dump on you. They all had to buy OTC at the same price as available to everyone else. The marketplace Alto doesn't charge any fees, which is, I would argue a very, very, very big difference from our beloved overlords at OpenSea. And the narratives right now are just pure, right? Like there's not much you can do to sort of discredit the growth there, other than say, hey, look, the usual suspects on crypto Twitter are the ones doing the narrative shaping. But hey, look, that's gonna happen anyway, right? Regardless of what coin it is.
And I think in some ways the big question is, like, to me, the narrative is being shaped, and then what extends the narrative from what we have now. And I think what'll be interesting to see is like what projects launch on it. Like as of right now, I think obviously long necks was something that came up first, and a bunch of people in mid-curve got long necks, and those are pretty interesting looking. And there's a few other interesting ones, but I'm really kind of curious to see what launches over the next couple weeks on it, and to see who uses it, and to see like kind of what stuff comes out, and to see if you talk about building on the chain. I'm really kind of curious to see if like interesting artists start to do anything on there. Hey, one of you guys, or maybe Eric, maybe it was you, who was into the graphs thing? Is that like a thing? Was it interesting technically, or is it just something that was there and you guys grabbed it?
So it was just one of these things where the artist was a former art blocks artist, and he had been doing stuff on Canto for a while, so he launched this thing. The thing that like people I think don't fully grasp about Canto NFTs, and one of the reasons that Canto NFTs have had this run is because they're all relatively small collections. I don't think any of the top 5 collections are like 10K collections or anywhere close. Most of them are around that 500 to 2,000 range. And so you're just talking about like this perfect storm of a lot of interest, not a ton of supply, not a ton of people listing. And so that's cost prices to go vertical. But glyphs are a great example of that. I think they got called in mid curve at like 400. 30 minutes later they were over 1,000, and then 3 hours later, they had crossed the 5,000. And it's like technically they're cool, and they look great, but it is just, I think this is just one of those things where like this information got disseminated very early. People in this space who move numbers grasped onto it, and then there was just a grab, and you're talking about a Fidenza size collection. So there's not that much to go around.
And it helps that Dingling came on board.
Yeah, I didn't want to name him, but yeah, it helped that he came along, basically bought 10% of every top collection.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't happen very often in
Yeah.
this space in general, I feel
Yeah.
like. Okay, well, that's, I mean, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, this I think it's interesting. This pure chain, no VC, all this goodwill stuff. I feel like it's I could either like be Moon, or also like it just gets like beaten to death by the bullies in the schoolyard. Although a lot of those bullies, were wearing no pants when the tides went out, so maybe there's less around.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. Also, you always hate to use this word, and I really despise it in crypto in general, the idea of governance or whatever, how people are going to kind of like do anything with it, but who knows? I think at this point, it's to me, it's kind of a really fascinating thing to watch, and honestly, it's encouraging in some ways just to see something get traction in that slightly different. Like I said, I don't have fond memories of Solana that much, and I think obviously Solana has not done very well since then. But you know what? It's like alternative chains are always interesting.
They did the right thing by making it as easy as possible to deploy Ethereum smart contracts on their network, right? Like a big piece of this, in contrast to many other L1s, of course not all of them, is the EVM compatibility. I don't know if you guys know more about that than me. I know it's not as high as, I think it's not as high as something like Arbitrum, where it's literally like 1 or 2 clicks to deploy a standard mainnet contract, but it is pretty seamless, and that was a goal of theirs. So maybe that's useful for attracting more builders, right?
Yeah, I was actually going to play around with it and try to deploy something either tonight or tomorrow just to see what it's like, because I'm really kind of curious as an amateur deployer. I'm definitely not a smart contract developer per se, but I wanted to kind of just see how easy it would be, because I've heard that as well. So it'd be interesting to see. Actually, I think something else that's worth probably talking about on alternate chains is Arbitrum. And only because Magic as a token is also ripping right now, which I think is a very interesting thing. And I'm curious to hear what opinions are here about it. I think Magic got to like 170 today, and it was for a long time sitting in the like 25 to 30 cent range. So anybody have an opinion on that? I don't know, Grant or Eric or Salty, anybody have a take on why that is?
Just before we leave California, I just feel
Did you say
compelled to
Cantofornia?
say, yeah, California. I feel compelled to say that it is very much a shitcoin chain, right? Like, let's not get lost in the details here. I mean, just look at the market cap. Everything is super experimental. And I say this as like someone who got the beta tester airdrop, right? Like, everything's great right now, super organic, but I wouldn't put much more than a couple $100 if you're just playing around on it.
That said, we just heard in the Midcurve Discord that Schnoizes just ripped. So Schnoizes, the Canto NFT.
No.
All right, sorry.
Don't do this.
This.
Please don't do this.
Yes, exactly. Schnoizes ripped.
And that's Schnoizes. SCH. No, I think Grant's caution is really it's pretty important, because most of these NFTs collections that we're fucking ripping around right now have been around since August, and they've just not minted out. Cantillionaires, we were all minting them because this project was around in August and it just never minted out. I don't think like half the people who were trading on Alto even realized that. So yes, please be careful, and it's the Hotel California.
Oh my god! It's a night. The bridging part is not fun. Okay, so switching over to Magic. Anybody have a take on Magic and what's going on over with Arbitrum? It does seem to be getting quite a bit of play. I know also when you think about shitcoin chains, in some ways it's a little bit that as well. Anybody have an idea of like why Magic is ripping so hard?
Dude, I'll just say I saw Magic price pump. I didn't realize it got this high, but I saw that price pumping before this big unlock that was coming, and all the like Magic small folks being like, "Oh, bullish unlocking," and I just shook my head. I was like, "These fools! Like, of course people are pumping the coin right before they get an unlock to dump it for a higher price." But I was wrong. It really was a bullish unlocking.
Yeah, that was something that kind of surprised me too, and just I'm sure probably anybody's listening to this kind of understands. But there was a lot of Magic that had been locked up, I think, for a year, right, or something that just kind of unlocked. And I think all of us expected it to dump back down. But I don't know, Grant, is there anything on Arbitrum or Magic that's interesting to you at this point, or do you just kind of expect it to happen and go up and go down based on what's going on in the general sense of the world?
I haven't been keeping track of new developments. I know we talked about Beacon about a month ago, and I think that's still sort of in development and was all things considered, a pretty well done desktop game. I'm not sure you can call it a blockchain game, but a game nonetheless, attached to the ecosystem. And I think it's just reflective of, the exhaustion of sellers, really, right? And the idea that the pain trade continues to be up this quarter, even for
Yeah, I think that makes
coins
sense
that
because in
are
some ways it's like
as
people still have
downtrodden
bags in a lot of
as
this
Magic.
stuff. And I think, even Doge, right? You're going to see Doge, I'm sure, have a run at some point in this space. Eric, is there anything special to you about Magic at all? Is there anything worth talking about? No.
Nah, I just think it's just layer 2 season, and then not Magic in particular, but there's just been a lot of interest across all the ARB because people want that airdrop. The way that I kind of conceptualize Arbitrum is that it's like
Hey, optimism is up.
but
It's
it
also
doesn't
up.
suck ass. And so like the token the token itself is would actually accrue more value, and there is no, and optimism is a good example of like the focus on layer 2s, because with Starknet, ZK Sync, and Arbitrum not having released their native tokens, optimism is really like the only true layer 2 solution with a token in town right now. And so if you're going to play that narrative, that's the only token that you can play. I don't think anyone who actually understands layer 2s would in any situation value like an OP token over an ARB token. Like unless the tokenomics of ARB are just like straight up reptilian, but I don't think that's going to be the case. So I think it's just one of those things where like, there's nothing. Magic has some form of product. I think we, like Grant said, we sort of round trip the worst of the Atlas Mine fiasco and the Bridgewell fiasco. And so, now it's just one of these other proxies for people to express their interest
that makes sense.
in art.
Why don't we switch
And
over?
I
sorry,
get it.
Salty,
Well,
go
I
ahead.
just want to
I
real
think
quick
it'll probably
earmark
work.
reptilian tokenomics as a great way to describe Garbo tokens we don't like.
We're gonna
I
definitely
was-
keep it there.
I was thinking about this too because I was like, man, I'm looking at Matic and some of these other L2s, ZK, Sync, Snark, all this stuff, and all these coins are ripping. I mean, in general, tokens are ripping, not specifically the ones I named, but I was like, man, why aren't I rich yet? And then I was like, I keep forgetting ARB doesn't have a token. Man, when ARB actually has a token, all gonna be rich.
Because well, there you go. We're all gonna be rich whenever the next comes around. ARB's supposed to have one though at some point, right? That is one of the big rumored ones. That I feel like that and the MetaMask token are the two that have been floating as rumors forever and ever.
Is MetaMask token actually going to happen? Actually, Eric or Grant, you guys probably have a better inside track on this. Is that really going to be a thing, or was that just hopium? Okay.
No, it's going to be a thing. I think enough people have affirmed that it is going to be a thing, but the governance aspects of this are very, very tricky. And I think it's the Uniswap conundrum, right? Like, how do you sort of build sustainable tokenomics, especially in the context of people now wanting real yield for a business that is growing but probably not profitable, although very, very core to overall functionality of Web3 and particularly Ethereum, right? Like, just Uniswap I say it's a Uniswap conundrum because everybody ascribes value to the Uniswap token because in a world where Uniswap didn't exist, we will all be worse off, right? But also the problem is the Uniswap itself is also not super profitable, and so there is no yield to, even if they were to distribute revenues back to, I think, the token holders, there wouldn't really be enough to even justify the price. And so it kind of puts it in this weird box where like the tokens still don't really do anything, but you can't also say that they're worthless because they're attached to something
Yeah,
that
when
is
it
very,
when it
very,
comes to
very
reptilian
critical
tokenomics, I
to
mean,
you know
OP
the
or
space as a
Optimism is
whole.
much better than Uniswap because at least Optimism's a gas token, so there's some use for it. But I mean, Uniswap literally does nothing, owns nothing, is owed nothing. You know, it
Yes.
just is. So I could see, I don't know, I don't have any insider knowledge on that, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Arbitrum folks like haven't fully figured this out. Like, yeah, how do you do that? Have a token that's not meaningless, but also it's not gonna a gas token because they're not gonna change to have an ARB gas token on the chain, right?
Right.
I it's kind of like funny that we all complain about bad tokenomics, but it's like if you want to really see reptilian tokenomics, just read the share prospectus for like a public company. What are the tokenomics of Facebook? The tokenomics of Facebook is uh Mark Zuckerberg can basically spend billions of dollars on stumpless avatars, and there's not
I'm gonna
much that
lay
you can
off
do about it.
15,000 people, and you're gonna be a
Those are the
floating stump
tokenomics for
in
Facebook.
the metaverse, and you're gonna
Elon
like it.
Musk. So what are your tokenomics? I think it's just like, you know, we're overly fixated on tokenomics, but at the end of the day, if tokenomics are, I think, fixable, um, shitty product isn't, right? And DYDX is a good example of that, where great fucking product, horrendous tokenomics. But the team is actually at least acknowledging that, and I think like making much needed revisions, and they've gotten good support from their early
Interesting.
investors to delay the major token unlock, and that's why the token has tripled.
Yeah, as annoyed as I am to have those two hearts on my Twitter headline for the last year, I think the teams are smart now. They recognize all of these things, the announcement for the tokenomics, the tokens dropping, the governance, they're all bullets in the chamber, right? And once you use them up, you can't they don't go back in the chamber. So use them wisely. It's a lot easier to have like fresh tokenomics than what Eric just described in the DYDX case of, hey, we're just gonna punt the unlock period another year like that. Think
It
about
does
how
seem
much,
sometimes to me that like
backroom
the
dealings and
amount of
negotiations
stuff
that
that just gets
required.
kind of put forward and then shelved and then put forward again in the space isn't. I mean, this is how a problem I think I've seen in a lot of things. But anyway, let's yes, governance, exactly, governance. Yeah.
Governance, funky governance. It's the
Yeah.
when they were looking for a new CEO for Sushi Swap, the people spoke and they
Why?
demanded
Of
that
course,
animal
which all
husbandry was
CEOs
a
need to have in some
necessary
form,
requirement
right?
for the role.
Let's switch over to what I think is a pretty interesting conversation around Dookey Dash. Let's talk about what's going on with Yuga right now, because I think in a lot of ways, sewer passes and Dookey Dash is driving a little bit of the NFT market. Obviously, the last week in the world of blue chips has been mostly down. And actually, I do want to talk briefly about Doodles, because I think Doodles has really been shitting the bed quite a bit lately. But I think first we should get into Yuga. And it seems like to me, and I don't know if anybody disagrees with this, but it seems like Dookey Dash is pretty successful. There's some stories that have come out that like, the pro Fortnite gamers are playing the game and they're getting the high scores. Does anybody in this group disagree with that? Does everybody feel that Dookey Dash has kind of served what its purpose was? All right, so that's good. So everybody agrees. Grant, I know you've talked about a little bit about sewer passes, and obviously the price went up, and I think it's come down a little bit more. But do you think this has been a good move for Yuga?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen the full playbook, but it's incremental progress, right? And it's more than what the other major blue chips, if you can call them that, have done, right? Like what we asked for in December was put up or shut up, and they came out with not something exactly fresh and innovative, but enough, right? Where it's caused. First of all, let's just go back to basics. It was free, and it went to holders, so it drove value back into the ecosystem, and it provided much needed stimulus to the broader NFT market without sucking in any via primary mint costs. And then secondly, the mechanic has caused a ton of like attention from non-NFT people. And yes, it's like the competition has naturally led to pay to win or pay to play, but those outcomes aren't guaranteed, right? You don't know that prizes 1 to 100 are necessarily based on your 700,000 or 800,000 score in Dookey Dash. It might still be RNG and based on the tier of the passes and the value of the other assets that you're holding. So it's not like I think the book hasn't been written in full, so I'm hesitant to cast judgment.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to say one thing that I think is really interesting about this, and I wrote a little Twitter thread about it, is that I think that one thing that I found, and they have said that this isn't necessarily the case, but I think it's their first step into casual gaming, which is a much easier place to create and develop than AAA gaming is, right? So like, I mean, we still haven't seen the next Other Side trip. I don't know what's going on with that. They showed videos that are somewhat okay. They're interesting. They're in empty spaces, but what this is like a foray, a step into the world of casual gaming, which is an incredibly valuable and an incredibly lucrative aspect of gaming. And I think that one of the interesting things about the guy who came over from Activision, Activision owns King, which owns Candy Crush. They bought Candy Crush, and it's a massive part of their revenues. So I think that this is an interesting thing to see it be successful, to see a casual game kind of play out for them, and see, I think what you pointed out, Grant, which is really big, is that it's gotten attention outside of their NFT, outside of the NFT market. And I also believe that like they really should have allowed other people to try to play it. My thing about this is, why wouldn't you just let everybody play it and then only have the runs that count be the ones that are holding apes or are going to pay the boost? I think the bigger play here would be to get this in as many hands as possible. But I also am kind of I'm admiring what it's been so far. Like I think they've done a pretty good job of it, and it gives me hope for the idea that maybe there can be a gaming market for NFTs that could be larger than we think it is. Eric, what's your take on this whole space?
Yeah, I think, as far as the overall activation event went, it was, I think, a lot more successful than anybody would have thought. But it's all because it was, I think it was a relatively simple game, but really, easily addictive, and they dangled a massive carrot at the end, which is if you get a high score, it really affects your outcome in the next eventual event. And I think the turning point for this is that one of these pro gamers is going to come and get like a top 10 score, and then watch as one of these passes inevitably goes for mid six to low seven figures, and realize that, hey, there is real money to be made in this space, and I kind of have to keep an eye on it, because it probably is not as easy to make the sort of money in just traditional gaming. So I think that is one of the things that, like, the perception changes that maybe like this kick starts, but very much in kind of agreement with Fran, like this is like step one of a really long process, and they haven't really been able to deliver anything on the other side so far. So it is still a lot of wait and see, but this, and you guys touched on this at the beginning, but I think this goes to decide, what Yuga understands very well is that they understand their holders. I understand that when you give something for free in this space, and that value that you create within the ecosystem, it generally speaking leads to better outcomes, versus when you charge for something and extract value from the ecosystem.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Salty, any other thoughts on this before we move on?
Oh no, I've still haven't forced myself to buy that tier 4 pass yet. Although I would recommend those out there doing it. You know, you got to get your investment buddies together and get a farm of 16 to 19-year-olds, and figure out a way to get them as much Adderall and modafinil as you can. You know, if you want to win this thing.
I know. Well, that's a
Not
funny thing, right?
financial
Like
advice.
it's
Yeah.
so much of this is like it's the idea that like that someone could play Subway Surfers for $1 million is an insane idea for me to even imagine, and yet that's very much what's going to be happening here, right? Like you've got like we've got a couple of people in our mid curve Discord who are very good at it, and I just am like, God, these people, their brains it must get fried into their eyeballs, like it just must be this thing, but. People will go, and it is, in a way, it's play to earn. It's the classic thing. Oh, I have a question about this because I haven't played it and I don't have an ape or a sewer pass. When you play the game, are you also paying ape token to play, or ape token is for boosts? What's the deal with that?
So the
Boost.
ape token is for boost.
Okay.
But the way that the distribution of the game works is that your score based on how long you last is kind of like linear. And so the key differentiator of the boost is that one, they give you an extra 15%. But two, they also significantly increase the rarity of relics that drop on your run. And if you look at any sort of the runs that are high score, the majority of the points come from those relics. So even though you technically don't need the boost to play the game, to actually have any shot at getting like a semi decent score, you need the boost.
Right, which is so interesting because in the normal video game, free to play market, that is like a big no-no, right? Like the idea that you have to pay for boosts to do better in the game. I guess it depends on which market you're looking at. In the Fortnite world, that's a very unusual thing. In the Candy Crush world, obviously, if you can buy more lives and you can buy other stuff that will help you win. So it's an interesting thing to keep track of. Okay, I want to talk about one more thing before we wrap up here, which is kind of what I think feels like the destruction by themselves of Doodles right now. And I just to catch everybody up, I shouldn't say it's destruction, but like the Doodles launched Doodles 2. They announced the fact that they're going to be on the Flow blockchain, which is Dapper Labs' chain, and where at least one of the members of Doodles, I think, started, if not multiple. It's not been received very well. I think in general, the idea of Doodles 2 has not really been received very well. And the idea of Doodles 2 essentially are additional doodles that you can mint with your duplicator, which was something they airdropped to everybody. And prices are down quite a bit. In addition to that, there have been a couple public, I don't want to call them like, mistakes. I guess they are. They're just a couple things where one of the leaders of the project kind of came out and did not look good in public. So I think it's an interesting thing. It's it's another sort of situation which happened like what we saw with Artifact, where they made a mistake and then kind of piled on top of that mistake with other mistakes. I think the place to start probably with this conversation first is the Flow announcement, because I think it's a pretty big deal. Grant, what is your take on the fact that Doodles 2 is going to Flow? Is that just a dumb thing? Is it a non-starter? Do you get where they're coming from? What's your take on it?
So the term is a bit of a meme, and I make fun of Eric for mentioning it a lot, but there's no product market fit here. And it's just it's just irony, right? Because I knew for a long time this was coming. That they had a short list of options for Doodles 2, and none of the challengers were ever going to win. It was always going to be the Roham and the Flow Cartel that was going to take the cake, I guess. And I don't see it, right? Because you're openly flouting the fact that you're not going to return value to your Genesis holders, and you haven't won any friends or fans in the general community because one of your founders, named Poopy, likes to pick fights on Twitter. And I don't see a path forward. I'm actually happy because, like, it's kind of like in a much less dramatic fashion, obviously, but like the SBF and the Suzhus of the crypto cycle. Like we need the false idols of the last NFT cycle to be flushed out, right? Because I'm kind of done with the founders who flex their Maseratis or whatever the artifact guy has on Twitter while pretending for like 8 months that the monoliths twos were anything more than like a discount code for shoes. And you know, same goes for the Doodles guys. Like I'm just ready to move on and find new things to champion. Which is why, like, despite it still being like just a new shitcoin, Canto has been just so refreshing and so fun to play with, right? Because there's just no overhang and no bad baggage that, you know, leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yet. We'll see.
Exactly.
There will be some. Eric, what about you? What is your thoughts on where Doodles is at?
I love Doodles too because it just makes it really easy for me to never have to think about Doodles again. You know, I honestly I am not. I am a little surprised that they just didn't just call it Doodles and then deny that the original Doodles were ever a thing or ever existed. Because that's exactly what they've done. So you know, like I I was stupid last year and about these fucking Genesis boxes. And I always joke to myself that like the best thing that could happen is for people to open these boxes and just have like vicious hornets come out of them.
The Hunger Games version.
But like that would be, yeah, like that would be, you know, that would be very refreshing versus like the banal bullshit that we're getting right now. And I think, you know, Web3 people obviously are miffed. Longtime collectors are not happy, and Web2 consumers are smart enough to sniff out a rat. So I just don't see. I just don't see it. And luckily I don't have to care about it anymore. So great.
Yeah, I mean, what my first reaction to seeing it spread on Twitter was, oh, this looks like Decentraland stuff. And we know what I mean, if you were around in the NFTs in the, you know, 2021, late 2021 era, one of the biggest things was, and in fact, Artifact even did this, dropping stuff to wear in Decentraland, right? And like just that direct connection between that mental picture in my brain and what I saw of Doodles 2, it's like it felt like an old idea in the space. It felt like a broken idea. And again, I don't ever want to, I don't ever put like on any team, like I've, you know, obviously people invest a lot of money. They spend a lot of time on this project internally. I have a lot of issues with how they communicate stuff, but I think that like, I don't want people to have to lose money, but like, it just doesn't feel fresh to me in any sort of way. And I was hoping that they were going to come out with something that was going to be interesting and that maybe the duplicators would create people or different versions of something. And I know they've teased what the thing is, but like wearables and clothes seem like such a backwards, weird, old idea to me. And I just don't know if they've ever worked in any sort of way. I just don't know if trading wearable, unless they work in a place where there's an environment for them to work. Like Fortnite wearables work really well because people spend a lot of time in Fortnite in an engine that has things you can wear, that you can see stuff that you can show off with. There's no place to show off whatever your Doodles puffy coat, you know. And as much as the art, like it's a good looking puffy coat, Burnt Toast is a great artist, but I don't know what you're going to do with those things. Like I just don't understand it at all. So like it feels like it's a miss in a huge way.
I mean, yeah, like I just don't understand who is this person that will spend thousands of dollars fashioning this avatar that, you know, you can only see in the blockchain equivalent of Burkina Faso. Like I really like, you know, I would love to see the market surveys on that one. Because I really I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, well, we should wrap up here. Before we go, we always like to ask everybody on the team here what we're looking forward to for the next week. Interesting times in this space right now, obviously. Some pretty big projects coming up. And we don't have any dates for some of the bigger stuff, I don't think yet. Like we didn't talk about this, but the Proof conference tickets dropped and have not sold out yet. We expect there to be some sort of big Proof announcements around Mystics, is that what they're called? Mystics at some point.
Mythics.
Mythics. Thank you. That's going to be coming at some point. But I don't know, Grant, what else are you looking forward to in the next week? I know with the Blur airdrops coming in a couple weeks, but for this week, is there anything that's on your radar?
Yeah, I think ETH and NFTs have suffered pretty bad. Well, not they have suffered, but like kind of expected drawdown. When you factor in the volatility in ETH over the past month or so. Personally, I'm kind of done with Open Edition and 1155 burn for more art meta. I think we've had a nice month of that, and I'm ready to move back on to Ponzi's that I'm familiar with. So I'm hoping that 2 weeks from now, the Blur airdrop and the sewer pass resolution, phase 1 resolution at least, brings us sort of back to the old haunts. So we'll see.
Okay, great. What about you, Eric? What are you looking forward to this week?
Blur.
Okay.
Blur. Yeah, I think we didn't really talk about this, but I think like their adoption of Seaport is a major game changer, and it's just a very interesting development in sort of the marketplace wars. So now that move I think has allowed them to reclaim a significant portion of volume, and it's a really effective way to render any attempt to implement a filter registry standard in the industry impotent, because it just I think it's going to be. I'm interested to see what the OS response is to this, but I don't think there is one.
Yeah, it is a really fascinating story, and we should we can go into this maybe the next time even, but like it's definitely worth tracking. Like, this has been an ongoing fight between the two, and it has to do with the permissioning and the restricted stuff off of everything besides OpenSea, and it does seem to open it up in a big way, and honestly at a good time, right? Because like with their airdrop coming on February 14th, you would want them to have as much possible volume there when they're going public with that. So that makes a lot of sense. Salty, what about you? What are you looking forward to this week?
I'll echo Blur. Outside of that, nothing too specific. I guess I enjoy if we continue to grind higher in prices every week. I look forward to seeing which zombie projects and scumbags like come crawling out of the sewers back into the industry. So that's the only thing I've been super looking forward to. Who knows who'll pop up next?
Who gets to rewrite their narrative? The rewriting of the narratives will be happening in a big way, I'm sure.
Not a single one of us said slam gas to buy proof of conference tickets. Really disappointed in us. This is clearly not a podcast for fine art enjoyers.
I want to be really charitable there because I think the optics of it aside, like that the conference like that with that lineup, what they're asking for is not unreasonable. I just think group holders, Moonbird holders should have just gotten it for free. Really, I think that obviously irks a little bit, but actually I'm excited about that conference.
I actually think the conference is pretty cool too. I just think that I don't know. Is there something about the way proof, and obviously I've had this issue and I've said it multiple times. A lot of these bigger places just don't feel like they understand what the information they're going to roll out is going to be received as. And this was rolled out, as far as I can tell, I think in a Twitter thread on Sunday, and outside of proof people or even to kind of discover. And it just felt like a little bit of a punch in the gut when you're like, oh my God, it's going to be this much money. But you're right. I mean, the lineup is great. I mean, and also I think somebody mentioned this, like, they've teased minting on site. So clearly with that lineup, Beeple's going to be there and a bunch of other people are going to be there. Probably a pretty valuable, conceivably pretty valuable piece of art NFT or something you could be able to get out of attending. And I think I will mint mine at some point soon. Do we know where the last I looked, there were like 1,200 minted. Is it around that same time? Is that around the same amount now? Anybody know?
I haven't checked.
Yeah. Anyway, no big deal.
And as much as I make fun of them, I just want to say I am along oddities heading into Mythics. Really need everyone to pitch in here and buy some buy some oddities here.
Get some of those weird little gremlin things. Okay, before we go, I'm looking forward to something that is interesting to me. I'm not 100% sure how it's going to do. It's called Loud Punks from the Rolling Loud Festival people. This is a very interesting mint in that there are 5,555 of them, which is a lot. It is going to cost 1.5 ETH to mint, which is also a lot. But it is from the world's largest hip hop festival now, and there is real world benefit in that you get lifetime passes to the event around the world. So it's an interesting conversation. I'm not sure it's going to work yet. I did hear a Spaces with the Rolling Loud, I think CEO the other day, and it's definitely coming from the top. So it's something that like is really they're trying to do. And if you know these festivals, if you're not familiar, Rolling Loud is kind of like the hip hop version of Coachella, and there's a bunch of them. There's one coming up in LA in March. There's another one in Thailand in April. So they're trying to expand out, and they have big names. Like Thailand is headlined by Cardi B, right? So these are real giant festivals. And like, I don't know, there's something really interesting about the idea of that sort of real actual utility that is something that we haven't seen a ton of yet. And I know Porsche, I think in a back around way was trying to get at this a little bit too. And they didn't nearly do a very good job of communicating it, but there is going to be benefit, I think, to holding things like this. Now, the question will become is, does the company go out of business? How long does it take you to return your value back? Like, how many of these could you actually attend a year? There's a lot of interesting things, but to me, it's an interesting take on the utility side of NFTs. Does anybody else have thoughts on Loud Punks? What's your all take on it?
I don't have one. I discovered that I've had whitelist for like the last 3 months, thanks to you mentioning it in our Discord.
Oh, that's good. That's great.
Well, if we can just let Funky talk for 10 minutes about how great this pass is, that would be great.
What about you, Eric? Is this on your radar at all?
I wish it was. I'm not cool. I've been listening to the same. I've been basically listening to Good Kid, Mad City for like the past 12 years. so my taste in music is very antiquated.
You should listen to the new A$AP Rocky out. Listen to the new A$AP Rocky. You'll like it. There's good stuff out there now.
I think it's a cool concept. Like and just as we kind of shit on NFTs for not having like real life utility, and you have it. I'm curious as to how this is ultimately going to perform in the secondary markets, and how NFT degens actually value these benefits or speculate.
Yep. I think that's my concern too, is I think people, like with the Porsche thing in some ways, there might be an overreach into terms of how much money is here right now. That said, I could also see these things going to 5 ETH off of a 1.5 mint. Not that it wouldn't be that hard for me to see that. I could also see them getting down to like 0.75. So I really am feeling unsure as to what's going to happen with them, but it's an interesting thing to me no matter what. I think the first minting starts tomorrow, so it's definitely worth keeping an eye on. But that's it for now. This is great. Sorry, we were a little late this week. Our schedules got a little messed up, but thank you for listening, everybody. Thanks from the 4 of us, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.